The evolution tower obviously takes its form from DNA, the twisting double helix structure. How did that form come to be, and how do you intend the tower to be evolutionary?
Well, it's not. It's DNA shape, DNA spiral is one of them, symbols or metaphor. But originally, it was a different symbol. It's actually, we started from the wedding palace. The original name of the project was a city palace. That was a sort of planning game and like a title function, a locomotive for the whole development. The city authority wanted to include social public function, and that was a wedding palace, or what we call in Russia, weddings don't get registered in the church, so you need to go to the registry office. And if you want something special, it's a palatial, it's a palace for weddings. So started from that function, and the city wanted something special because it's a cornerstone location in the Moscow city, and they wanted this wedding palace is 2,000 square meters, like addition to the commercial development, but they wanted the shape. That was a condition, actually. A developer, for the financial viability of the project, required more areas, more height, and but city wanted something, special, and they said, okay, you can go higher. The height limitation was on the 16 floors, and an area limited to 30,000 square meters, but they agreed to increase that. On condition of iconic. So if you build something iconic, that was a condition. It's interesting. And we started actually from a symbol yin yang, like in black and white, and taking it in 3D as a spiral. But that was like a dancing couple. That was black and white, like a groom and bride, in white and black. But that was too literal, so we departed from that and made it more like a neutral black and glass and white painted aluminium panels. But in 2008, financial crisis actually suspended the project, and when the project resurrected in 2011. City Hall, it was a change of, a re-election and after election, new mayor and a new city government, and they lost interest in moving their headquarters in Moscow City. They lost interest in the Palace of Weddings. And one of the reasons is a heavy traffic situation that could put in risk any sort of sequence of weddings, of ceremonies. If somebody's late, then everything gets ruined. So they lost interest, and developer had to reinvent the development and rebrand it. So they actually rebranded it as Evolution Tower, and we had to pick up this new symbols, which is DNA and Möbius tape and mathematical symbol of infinity, if you put it in a 90 degrees vertical. So these are many various inspirations, like spiraling domes of St. Basil or Tatlin Tower as a paper architecture. It's all about spiral as a symbol of development, and evolution is one of the forms of development. So history is not going by circles, actually by circle at the next level. So it becomes a spiral as a shape.
So the client or the city wanted a building that would be iconic, that would be recognizable, that would be unique. But even so, did you ever have trouble convincing them of this shape, that it would work, that it was the right shape for this site?
Yeah, it was surely it wasn't easy, but we've been very lucky with the client, with Mr. Alexander Chigirinsky, who is a developer and heading the Snigiri Group and main investor of the tower. So he has a great taste in modern architecture. So he picked up that this is a new trend. and that was early, like 2004. It was just the beginning of the new trend in architecture of twisting, tapering, free-form architecture, and so he loved it, and it wasn't hard job for us to convince, because it was something really with the to do with obsession of in this form, and everybody wanted to make it happen. It's challenging, but we actually managed to persuade that it looks really really difficult to build, but it's not actually. We can, if we optimize the structure, and we achieved really very fast speed construction, 6 days per floor in concrete. This is very fast. This is like a conventional building. So basically, the only difference between vertically extruded towers and the spiraling and twisters is that you actually stack the floors not vertically, but with an angle, increment angle every floor. So we have 3 degrees every floor, overall twist 156 degrees, but they're all typical floors. So everything is like a square-shaped plan, very efficient, very, the area is the same, efficiency is the same as in an extruded block, but it's just like you put the, chocolates, like a, German chocolate, the advertising, just put in the square-shaped chocolate as a tower. It looks very much like an Evolution tower.
Structurally, what were the main challenges in making that twisting shape stand?
Yeah, but structure is very simple. So we actually, we learned the lessons of other twisters, like Calatrava's turning torso is beautiful. It's very unique, but structure is also unique, and it doesn't have columns, has a central core,
right,
and and the steel truss like a spine bone. But that is, unique buildings are really difficult and unpredictable in planning all this logistics, and we departed from the challenge to make it financially feasible and commercially viable, taking the space planning of the conventional building with a 40 by 40 meters floor plate. So we have a very simple structure, vertical, everything is straight and vertical. So vertical core, 8 vertical columns, and only 4 columns at the corners twist with the shape. But all the other structure is all like typical. So it's a unification of the construction and the unification of the facade cladding. You have many different panels, but they're all the same. They repeat, 27 panels on that facade and 27 panels on that facade. But floor by floor, there is a repetition, which makes it, easier to build.
Tell us about urban development in Moscow. What are the main challenges going forward for Moscow to develop as a city and make sure that it retains its urban context, but achieves the goal of attracting more people, more businesses, more architecture like Evolution Tower?
Yeah, Evolution Tower is not the project is not only the tower. It's about the environment and context. It's tower is just one component of it. It's about 50% of the area, but the rest of the project is a big piazza. It's a 2.5 hectares land plot, and it has a big public piazza with greenery, with water features, and ceremonial stairs, and shopping mall underneath, linking directly to the metro station and to the pedestrian bridge across the river, so you can actually from the tower can get to the metro directly without going out. And it's linked to the shopping mall, and everything is linked together in a very convenient way for the for the tenant, for the employees, and which is why the tower was so successful. And now it is in the process of acquisition. The entire tower is being acquired by major Russian oil companies. This is now, as we understand, the most expensive office property in entire Russia and possibly in Europe. So it was appreciated by the market. But as you asked about the challenges of the overall Moscow as an urban, fabric and development. Yeah, we have a big question mark now in terms of future development. Just a couple of years ago, Moscow decided to increase its area more than 1.5 times. So actually 2 times. So now it's in terms of we have the southwest direction joining Moscow, formerly agricultural land, which is an area bigger than the boundary of or previous boundary of Moscow. So Moscow formally, because it's just a land, field, agricultural. So less forest, less. This is a potential for the Moscow. So what Moscow somehow decided to develop itself into the southwest. The major problem for Moscow, it's a radial city, concentric, like many European cities, based on the fortification system. The first wall, and then the fortress, and then another wall, and then, so it goes by circles, and this is a huge congestion of the traffic, and so Moscow decided to have instead of like satellites or like a green garden, like a garden city concept, to relocate the government and relocate the major offices, municipalities, and etc. to the new low-rise and more green town. And the master plan doesn't exist, so we are looking forward to see that next year. It's been developed. So that's a major challenge. The new Moscow authority doesn't support high-rise, which is worrying me. That they want to be more human scale, and which is good, but you have to have certain concentration of investment power and energy as a high-rise or clusters of high-rise, which is now not supported. But I think it's rather politically motivated. The same thing is politics. The same thing in Paris or London. You have one mayor supports high-rise, and the next mayor wouldn't support high-rise. And it's changing, like with the mayor, the trend.
Interesting. When it comes to the Moscow city development, there is some high-rise development in one area, right?
Yeah.
Moscow City also has several very eye-grabbing, eye-catching designs. But there's been some criticism that maybe those designs don't speak to each other, and that development could end up becoming like a skyscraper museum with a lot of very significant projects that don't have any relationship. What's the future of Moscow City, and do you think that there's potential to develop more urban context there as opposed to just standalone projects?
Yeah, I agree to some extent that some buildings, some towers are less successful than others, and but the market would decide. On the you would see whether the project is successful or not by the rate, occupancy rate, and the level of rent in this building. And but it looks like most of these buildings already built, skyscrapers, are quite successful. So they sold out most of the areas. There is some, there are vacant areas obviously for the offices at the moment in Moscow, but for the residential or other uses, it's okay. There is a market there, and Moscow City is continuing to develop itself, like increasing the areas, and there is a potential to grow as like a stage 2, phase 2, Moscow City 2, and it's attracting. It's generating new developments around. It's skyline and obviously the vertical dominant on Moscow horizon, and people want to see that. It's attracting. There is a shopping mall there. There would be, public piazza, and the restaurants. It's mixed use. Almost every tower is mixed use. It's like with the residential component, some hotels, some offices, and retail at the bottom. So it's getting towards the concept of city that never sleeps, which makes it it's not like just office office downtown.
But earlier you mentioned Moscow wanting to keep the city human scale and not being very not promoting high-rise development very actively.
Yeah,
which I gathered
current authorities.
Right,
Yes.
and I gather that you would say that high-rises can be human scale. So how can they do that? How can the high-rise development in Moscow promote a human scale interactions at the street level and the neighborhood scale?
There is a problem there. It's with in Moscow, there is a little human scale in Moscow, and it's as one of the big cities, and or maybe one of the biggest in Europe. Surely there is not enough understanding, even with architects, of that importance of the the street level, the landscape, and Russian architecture school was that was really the gap in the entire architecture school, the landscape. And Russian developers, they love to invite foreign landscape architects. They appreciate that different approach, and Russian architects are learning from that now, and they invest more time, and developers invest more sort of into the quality. But it's just kind of this understanding, because it used to be like very much like not appreciated aspect of that the street level, the quality of surface, and the the green, the landscape, the sculptures, water features. You need to you need to make it right, so people would enjoy not only just looking at the building 3 kilometers away, but come closer. And it's not easy to do, because you have certain challenges like wind, for instance. You need to have wind mitigation measures, have screens and maybe some trees, and between the towers it's very difficult. Sometimes in a windy day you cannot really walk easily, like in Chicago. Same thing. But it needs to be paid great attention to that street level and human scale, and how people feel about walking around.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.